Hello, my name is Owen Cook, and I'm the Director of Regulatory Transformation with Environment Protected Areas, and I'm here to talk to you about the digital regulatory assurance system and the rollout of some new functionality with regards to waste-related registrations, as well as touch on the Move My Authorization as part of our digital transformation and system modernization. I'll first start with an overview of our regulatory transformation. So a few years ago, we received some feedback on the performance of our regulatory system. It came back that our regulatory system is confusing, slow, and difficult to navigate. This is understandable because the environment itself is inherently complex, and there's complexity and competition in between activities. Activities aren't always well defined, and there's over 100 pieces of legislation that we need to take into consideration when making a decision. With our previous system, we had a bunch of disparate systems that didn't always connect well together. We didn't leverage our data appropriately, and a lot of the decision making rested in the hearts and minds of our staff, and which required a lot of manual work. So this resulted in our system being very slow because it was very difficult for us to succinctly articulate what the need was. It took us a lot of time to evaluate that information because it needed to be done by people, and we weren't always able to have the time and capacity to explain to applicants or our regulated community what our expectations were. And when you don't have those expectations clearly laid out in a consistent system, it can come across as confusing and slow. So we set an ambitious goal for ourselves. We wanted to inspire public confidence by providing excellence in regulatory assurance and also define what excellence in regulatory assurance was. So for that, we wanted a well-functioning system that was key to the province's economy, future investment, and also maintain those environmental standards that we set for ourselves. So by undertaking a regulatory transformation, it gave us an opportunity to redefine internal business processes, create that transparent, consistent, and predictable system, and this time through digitization. So before we relied on manual processes and training to get expert staff, now we can supplement those expert staff with a system that will help them gain access to the information, share access to information transparently, and facilitate decision making, which will help us make sure we make the right decisions in the right time. It also gives us an opportunity to take that risk and enshrine that risk and risk-informed decisions into a system so that we can get consistent application of controls, as well as give us an opportunity to make those controls more transparent and readily accessed and understood by those people who need to follow those controls. Because it's a big system and a lot of work ahead of us, we made sure that we addressed and embraced a culture of innovation and agility and continuous learning. So as part of this series of engagements, we want to hear back from the regulated community on things that they'd like to see and even their experiences with the system to date, because we want to make sure that we're providing value both to the regulator through receiving these applications and this information, and also to the regulated community, making sure that you're getting value and cost savings from some of these features. And at the end of the day, our regulatory transformation is meant to promote the economy and investment while also maintaining those standards by making them clearer as to what they are and more straightforward on what decisions need to be made on how to best meet those standards. So we establish a regulatory assurance framework that with some strategic goals to make sure that things like accountability, transparency, risk, innovation are key pillars to our strategic goals are set around. we want to make sure that we establish a comprehensive and effective regulatory system. So instead of looking at an application by application basis, we wanted to look at the regulatory life cycle of an activity. So application feeds into the authorization, which also feeds into monitoring reports, all the way to closure, because the public does expect the industry out there and the government to be accountable and responsible for their cumulative effects and make sure the appropriate management strategies have been put into place. Some of the principles that have been guiding our work in this transformation space has been outcomes-based decision making. So instead of ensuring that all the processes have been fulfilled, making sure that our processes reflect getting to an outcome. And what I mean by outcome is making sure that the approvals we issue result in the environmental values being maintained. So that means an application process should result in an approval with the appropriate checks and balances, and not an application process is simply to make sure that all the reports that the process required to fill out are filled out. We wanted to make sure that everything was impartial and transparent, consistent, risk-informed, responsive, and agile. And another principle is the knowledge and evidence-based. So you will see a transition from paper-based forms that are filed to entering data. And that knowledge and evidence-based is really leveraging our processes to collect data that can produce information that demonstrates that accountability to meeting those environmental standards. So to accomplish and implement this regulatory assurance framework, we created the Digital Regulatory Assurance System and made some key changes to how we approached regulatory assurance. So our regulatory assurance systems before comprised of a number of systems. I think we're in and around 50 systems that we've identified, but we really had a patchwork of systems that captured pieces of our regulatory system. So we decided that it was important for us to consolidate this into a one window user experience so that it was less confusing for folks to comply with their regulatory requirements and more straightforward for the regulator to go look for the information they needed to make decisions, as well as be more efficient with our IT assets. The more diversity you have in your tools, the more knowledge and skills you need to navigate those different technologies. So by having a consolidated ecosystem for information management, so we have DRAS to intake the data, we have a data management platform to collect the data, we now have an integrated spatial platform to manage our spatial data, as well as digital records management. So these are an ecosystem of technologies that house all the information and the data that we need to regulate the environment and make decisions. And this ultimately helps us make faster and better and more consistent and decisions that we can link back to those strategic outcomes. So we have this slide to demonstrate kind of where we came from to where we're going. For those of you who've worked with environment in the past, a lot of steps required to go through an application process, so very paper-based, so paper including PDFs that are emailed, that involve data entry, the risk of errors or things getting lost, the black box. These are all things that were a part of the past that were issues that were brought up. We tried our best, but when you have so many hands handling the information, errors are inevitable, and process delays is what we found was the biggest factor just in the exchange of that information in between hands. So what we've done with the Digital Regulatory Assurance System is streamlined a lot of those things. The data goes from the applicant or the source into the Digital Regulatory Assurance System, and we have some process automations to make sure that data goes to where it needs to go instantaneously. So one of the things that we've done is removed a lot of those handoff barriers. The system itself generates the notifications, as well as creates the authorization documents. So once the status of an authorization changes, you're instantly notified. There's a dashboard where people can keep track of all their interactions with the department, as well as have a record. So that transparency is really important that we wanted to address. And having the system enable participation and interaction with the regulator is really key to streamlining DRAS, because we found that gaps in communication were a significant source of our inefficiency. So where we're at today. So we have a few releases under our belt, and we're in the midst of the current one, which is related to the Environmental Protection Enhancement Act. So we've developed the online forums, and they're going through the process to refine and prepare them for release out to the public for public use. So we have all our notifications, we have registrations forms related to waste that are built, and we're testing them out to make sure they function as desired. So because we've been at this for a while, preliminary tests are showing they're working mostly well, with some opportunities for feedback. So we'll be working with our internal stakeholders as well as some external user testers to make sure that the forms are working in a way that makes it easier to get that information into the system. We're looking at getting these forms in a state where we can release them for operational use in the early fall, and we'll be continuing to reach out to stakeholders such as yourselves over the coming months until we release. And we want to make sure that you're successful in using these new tools. So we'll be providing some online resources like training, so that and helpful videos and knowledge articles, so that when you do engage in the system, we can remove as many of those barriers as possible. One of the things that I'll mention is that the digital transformation has changed the way we have relationships with stakeholders. And this is primarily through the dashboard. And to enable that evolution of our relationship, we need to be able to link a user account that allows you to log into the system with the department. And we also need to acknowledge that we have existing relationships through these authorizations. So for our upcoming release, we'll be dealing mainly with registrations. So we have registrations that have already been issued but need to be updated. But what we need to do is connect the user accounts to the authorizations that we currently have. So we've created this Move My Authorization step to help us facilitate the link between the accounts, which are alberta.ca account for organizations, for businesses, or alberta.ca account for individuals if an individual holds an IPA authorizations, and municipalities would use the organizational account. So this is a simple step where you type in your existing authorization number and give it a name, hit submit, and this will unlock the functionalities in DRAS. So we will then, once we've made that connection, we'll be able to send notifications for lifecycle events. So if you need to renew something like an approval, or there's an update that we need to provide you, or you need to submit a report, we're going to consolidate all our reporting to this online system, as well as any amendments or notifications to the director. Once your authorization is moved into DRAS, you'll have access to all these things. We also have created access to online records as well, so you'll be able to access some records as well. And then lastly, you'll be able to see which government representative is handling your file, so you'll know who to go to for questions. We've also created the environmental records viewer. So this is a transformation of our authorization viewer. Many of you are probably familiar with the authorization viewer. As we modernize authorizations into DRAS, those authorizations and their associated public records will be available through the Environmental Records Viewer. Currently, we have a view for water licenses as well as pesticide registrations. There's some helpful instruction resources available to navigate this successfully. And we're hoping as we progress through all the DRAS releases that we'll be able to fully shift off of the traditional records viewer and into this approvals viewer. I will note that the approvals viewer also has some functionality to access data and information as well and be able to export it to CSV. And there will be new data access features into the future as well. So environmental records viewer is an evolution of the traditional authorization viewer that we hope will provide some value. Getting started in DRAS. As I mentioned before, you will need an alberta.ca account. There's two types of accounts. There's an alberta.ca account, which is for individuals. So if you have renewed your vehicle registration or accessed medical records, this is the same account that you use for those purposes. The alberta.ca account for organizations is also, there are also other government online portals. I believe Grants is a popular one that use the alberta.ca account for organizations. It's the same account type to access DRAS as well. Some of those require a verified account. DRAS does not, just based on the nature of our interactions with folks. We don't need that account verified, as we will do a check to verify identity regardless. But there are resources available to learn how to create an organization account, or if you have an organization account already, or your organization has an account, you can get yourself added to your employer's account, or if you're an administrator, you can add your employees to your organizational account as well. I encourage you guys, if you have questions, this is a very important step, to reach out to the folks at alberta.ca account. We've also helped people navigate this, so you can email us with a request for more information as well, and we can point you in the right direction. For alberta.ca account for organizations, we encourage people to have multiple administrators on their account. And if you're going to log in to DRAS or create an alberta.ca account for organizations, please use your work email, not your personal email. Once you've created your alberta.ca account, the next step is to log into DRAS. And it's just as simple as using your alberta.ca account to log in, and then you're in. Once you're in, we encourage people to look at their DRAS profile to make sure the information is reflected of their account. There are also a couple of key features there on delegations. If you are an organization that has hired a consultant or a contractor that you do not want associated with your alberta.ca account, but you want them to work on your behalf in DRAS, there's a process step to be able to do that as well, which I'll demonstrate as part of the demo. And then once you've logged in, you can submit registration, application renewal, even submit an incident. Take advantage of those DRAS functionalities. Note that the more information you put into your alberta.ca account, the more information that we can pull into DRAS to make your life easier and make our lives easier as well. So there's a number of ways to get help. I mentioned earlier that environmental regulation is a complex system because the environment is complex. So we tried to make the system as simple as possible, but the reality is it is a complex system. We've found that once people get the hang of it, it becomes intuitive, but it is quite different from some of the user experiences you may have had previously. So we acknowledge this and have put a number of supports in place to make sure that you can get the help you need. So alberta.ca definitely has some help resources, so I encourage you to reach out to them. From a DRAS perspective, we also have dedicated support as well. There's a number of ways to access that support, whether it be contacting the email on the screen ahead of you. There's a form called Get Help that will create a portal support case in the system itself, and you'll be able to get email updates from the status of that, as well as interact with the regulator directly. Or we have front counters, individuals at offices across the province who have received some basic training in DRAS to help you gain access to the system and undertake some navigation, even with things like move my authorization, move my license. They'll be able to help answer some of your questions there as well. We will be providing additional help resources, including some training materials closer to the release date, so stay tuned for those, and you can look for updates on the DRAS webpage prior to logging into DRAS. All right, so I'm going to skip over to a demo at this point and walk you through some of the features that we've built. So if you haven't seen the DRAS system before, this is what the landing page looks like once you've accessed the system. So there is a step that I've skipped over, which is the login. So if you come into the system for the first time, you'll see a login thing here. Click there and it will ask you to log in. I'm already logged in as a persona. If you don't see that and you try and click submit an application, it will redirect you to the login regardless. There's some areas of the form you can access without logging in, those being the knowledge FAQ section, the public notice, and this get help. The other ones you'll need to be logged in to access those parts of the form. So I'll start by giving an overview. So we have 4 tiles here. The submit application is a popular one for people submitting applications. The dashboard is an important one that I'll showcase as well. And then because we've integrated the entire life cycle for regulatory assurance, we also have a submit incident space as well. You'll note that there's a phone number here as well. So you have the option to submit an incident through the portal, or you still have the ability to phone the help center, because regardless, we want to hear from you if you have an environmental incident. So if this is not working out, you always have the option to call the edge. And we absolutely want emergencies to be called in to us right away so we can take appropriate action. So I talked about the profile, so I'll click on the profile and show you what that looks like. So under the profile space, I can see that it's pulled in the alberta.ca account information here, including my account, my email, my user ID, as well as some user preferences. The client IDs is related to public lands. So for those of you who've dealt with public lands and you have a client ID, you can add new client IDs by clicking there. And this is where you would manage your third-party delegates. If you have employees, I would encourage you to go to alberta.ca and add them to your alberta.ca account. But if you're hiring a third-party consultant, here's where you would want to add those. So I can remove delegates fairly easy, hit save, or I can add them. So if I went to Industries Limited, I can look up the people who are associated with this account. So if I wanted to add this individual to them, I can select the grant on behalf of here, add that person, and then I can change their permission. So if I don't want to give them, if I just want to give them read access, write, or submit, or I can give them access to all 4 of these, I can click save. By giving them this delegate access, it allows this consultant to redelegate access on behalf of your organization to other folks. Typically, we encourage delegates if you want this individual who's a part of the contracting company to be able to delegate to their colleagues if they go away. If you just want a single person working on this, then you need to add them yourselves. If I only had read, write, and submit, and I wanted 3 people in the company, I would need to add all 3 of those people unless I delegated permission to one of them with the ability for them to redelegate to their peers. So if I remove this individual, their access to work on my behalf is severed immediately. So one of the things about this system is everything is fairly instantaneous. If I received permission from someone else, you would see a profile like this similarly show up here, and you were able to sever permission that someone else has granted you as well. So if you are a consultant, you have like 30 people here, you can, and you're not working for 3 of them, you can remove yourself from them. You don't need to wait for them to remove your authorities. Okay, so now we'll go to submit an application. So I'll submit an application. You can see that there's a number of categories here. We've built the water. We're into the Environmental Protection Enhancement Act here. So look at some registrations. And I'll look at this Class 1 compost facility first. We start the application out with some pre-screening questions. So is this for a Class 1 compost facility? And if I say, no, it's for a landfill, it'll actually tell me you don't need a registration. So if I was like a Class 2 or Class 3 or not a Class 1 compost facility, it would just tell me I don't need to apply, so I'm in the wrong form. Okay, so let's say that this isn't the form, or if I say yes, it'll ask me another question. Does it exceed 20,000 tons? Yep. Oh, that's an approval, so it's no. And then once I pass the pre-screening questions, now I can get to the main application. And there's some information here. But let's say I have an application form for a hydrovac facility. So I've answered my pre-screening questions. It figured out that I'm this person. It asked me if I'm submitting on behalf of an organization. I said no, because this is my company. And then these grayed out fields denote that they've automatically picked this from my profile because it knows who I am. Because I'm not applying on behalf of anybody, I'm just applying on behalf of myself. It knows who I am. So I submitted a new application and it's shown me this map. So I'm zoomed in. If I zoom out a little bit, some of the features will come into view here. But if I wanted to see some other features, I have a legend here, and I can turn on some of these pieces of information. So I want to see my world imagery before I drew my thing on the map. So I put that there, and I know my hydrovac facility is right here. This little plot of land. So I'm going to add a feature, area of interest. Say this is my area of interest right here. And that is my hydrovac facility. Alternatively, you could upload a geospatial file, and it'll ask you for to upload the geospatial information as well. There are instructions on uploading geospatial files. There is some nuance to it, but we have some instructions here on how to appropriately upload your geospatial information. We add some metadata to this. I click add and click save. Once I hit save, what the system is doing right now is it's doing some geoprocessing. So it's looking at the shape I drew and figuring out where in the province it is. It's intersecting it with a bunch of layers to derive the spatial location information. So you'll notice in some of these, in the rest of the form, we don't actually ask for the legal land location or the municipality or anything like that, because we by hitting save, we figured out all that stuff for you. So I filled out some of these forms, so it'll ask me for contacts. We have some check boxes, and as you click these check boxes, some of these questions, so you'll note when I hit industrial sumps, it added another question, so it reacts to the information that you submit. These asterisks denote mandatory information, and I get to the bottom here, and I try and hit generate to-dos, but you'll note that these required information boxes are unfilled, and I get a notification here saying, please, please read the Hydrovac application disclaimer checkbox. So that's here, as well as the other checkbox, which is right here. So I click on this guy, that disclaimer, and this disclaimer. And you'll notice that those have been cleared, and now I can generate my to-dos. And I do not get an error on my submission. This is the first step. What happens here is it records all the information in the form, and these to-dos will be will be asking for additional information with regards to this application. So you'll note that we've switched to a different view. So now I have my draft application and a status bar. I have a submit application button, as well as some additional actions. And I have these actions to do. The detail is where my form is, so the information I previously submitted, as well as some other tabs. So in my actions to do, you'll note that I have 4 to-dos assigned. If I try and hit submit the application without filling these to-dos, the system will say, you must complete these, and then submit. So if I expand this, you'll notice that it's a drop files here request. So if I go here and just say I have a file here, operations, plop that in there, it will upload this operational definitions, and this button that says mark complete that was gray, it's now blue. I can click that, and the system will acknowledge that I have completed this to do by dropping something in there. So you'll see that to do 500377 is complete. This empty circle has now got a check mark on it, and it's complete. So that's good. I can do drop information in the rest of these. So I will do these. Groundwater monitoring program. We'll put there. An operations plan. So that shows up, and I'll be able to complete it and hit submit. So you can see that as I hit complete, these circles get the check marks in them, and then I'll be able to add them to the submission. If you want to add 2 documents to one of these, you can. So I can put in, say, 2 things that are responsive to this to do, and it will upload that second one as well. So once you have all your attachments attached, you can hit submit. So I can review here, all green dots, hit submit application, and it will submit the application. You'll see the submit application's gone, and the screen reloads, and you'll notice that the status bar is updated, and you'll get a confirmation email that your application has been received by the department. On our side, we'll receive a notification, so you can see that it's now the draft is checked, and we're into a completeness review. At this point, you can send notes to the case review coordinator. So you can send that, and what it'll do is it'll tag that you sent this question, and it'll show up for the regulator in the regulator view. Some of these tabs will be populated. So if this was an approval, some of the conditions might show up. And then in this other information tab, you can see that the state is submitted. And then once it's assigned, you'll actually see who it got assigned to. So I'm going to switch gears here and show the application dashboard. So to access the dashboard, I can go from home. I can see the dashboard, access the dashboard here, or I can click up here and it will jump me to the dashboard. So I'll click here and hop over. And you'll see a bunch of tabs again. So these represent the different kinds of cases in the system. Like we have applications that I just went through. Once they're issued, they turn into authorizations. If you submit a portal support case asking for help, we have portal support cases. Same with statements of concerns, reservations, even your environmental incidents. So if you submit an incident, you'll have a listing of them here, compliance cases and long-term management cases. What I want to show you is your authorizations. So this is a bit new from previous systems in that once your application is approved, we have a record of that approval here, and it has some unique functionalities. So I'll open this guy up and show you what you'll see when you open up an authorization. So you'll see here some basic information on who the contact is, which account is assigned to it, what the activity is, and some history. So you can see that the registration document was created this day and time. I can open it here, but you can also access that document here as well. So this registration, if I wanted to see a copy of it, you'll see it downloaded, and I can open that registration, and you'll see who all the details associated with that registration. You'll also notice that there's to-dos. So sometimes the regulator will assign specific tasks that need to be done during the life of an authorization, as well as any conditions. But seeing as the registration, there are no conditions. If there are reports associated, they'll be in the report types, and we also have a space to track the submitted reports. So for this, we put in a tonnage report for this, and to submit a new report, it's simply here. Go here and click on an annual tonnage report, and what will happen is it'll kick you over to a report. It'll automatically populate the authorization and the information that we already know that you're trying to submit a tonnage report. And then we have some options on how to enter this. Because this is an annual required, annual submission requirement, we can put just some information in here and then submit. Oh, looks like I need to fill out all the things. Now that I've finished inputting my values, I hit submit, and the report will be submitted. There are additional actions with regards to the authorization as well that will be slightly new. So in the past, we've asked people to report using emails, but now we will receive everything through the system. So notifications to the director, letter of authorization requests, requesting cancellation of your authorization or amendments are now all accessed through the authorization itself. So again, some of the features that are similar to the reporting is when you click on that, it will automatically populate some of the information, including who you are, the authorization number, the type of authorization, and we have structured data for the request. We have final closure plan. So if I wanted to submit a final closure plan, it triggers a date when you're going to last accept waste, say next week, and then provide further details. We'll generate the to-dos. Oh, if you miss pieces of information, again, it will point you back to making sure you fill out all that information, and then you can submit this information and it will be received by the regulator, or in this case, generate to-dos for some follow-up information. I go back to my authorization and you notice that I submitted a report. That submitted report types shows up in the history here now as well. So it shows that I have one report submitted against this authorization for 2025. If I had any questions, I can get help from here, and the get help form is again structured data. So it will automatically, it knows that I'm coming from this authorization. So it will say, you have a question about an authorization. Although you can change this to something else, we take a stab at that. If you're coming to this form from this space, you're going to have a question about your authorization. So again, there's some form. We want a complete application so we can help you properly. So we have controls in place for this as well. So that's all I was going to show for the demo part today. Again, if you guys have questions or comments, please feel free to email us with those questions. So the next steps. We will continue to build the DRS system. So the forms that I gave an overview of today, plus others, are continuing to be built and will be ready for your use in the fall. We'll be collecting feedback from our user testing to make sure that they're functioning properly and user-friendly, and then also providing training resources to make sure that you folks can use them successfully. We'll be continuing to have sessions like this to communicate progress, as well as there'll be training resources available for you to learn at your own pace. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this presentation. And if you have any questions about anything you've heard today, or the DRS system or regulatory transformation in general, please don't hesitate to send us an email at the email address on your screen. Thank you and have a great day.